How's it going, guys? Cody back again, dropping yet another video. Right, guys, this time it's a mixture of coronavirus, it's a mixture of public protection equipment for prison officers, mentioning prison deaths. It's an update on how many prisoners have apparently tested positive for COVID-19, but again, take those with a pinch of salt. And it's also calling for the release of 15,000 prisoners. Whether that happens or not, it's going to be a completely different kettle of fish. Anyway, guys, this is in the Express and Star. Link in the description below, like I always do. Headline reads, calls for urgent action to protect prison staff and inmates from coronavirus. The government has already announced some prisoners will be temporarily released. Easy for me to say. Failure to drastically and urgently reduce the number of prisoners behind bars to protect them and others from coronavirus will have a devastating impact, campaigners have warned. The comments came after it emerged a death toll of inmates who had died after contracting the coronavirus has now risen to 10. 3 inmates at H&P Lachey, Cambridgeshire, whilst others being held at Birmingham, Manchester, Alt Course on Merseyside, Belmarsh in South East London, Watting in Nottinghamshire, H&P Sudbury in Derbyshire, and a female prisoner at Low Newton, County Durham. A total of 116 prisoners are tested positive for COVID-19 in 43 prisons as of 5 p.m. on Monday. There are 19 staff in 12 jails who have contracted the virus as well as 4 prison escort and custody services staff. Just 6 pregnant inmates have been released from prison so far since the Ministry of Justice announced the move to grant temporary release a week ago, according to the Commons Justice Committee. Pregnant women who are considered to be high risk should they contract COVID-19 will be granted temporary release from prison within days to protect them and their unborn children from coronavirus, the MOJ said on March the 31st. The decision also included mothers who were behind bars with their young children, but prison governors would only consent if they passed the risk assessment and do not pose a high risk of harm to the public. There are currently 35 pregnant prisoners and 34 inmates in mother and baby units across 12 prisons in England. Charity Women in Prison said the government was taking too long to act, adding failure to act with urgency to drastically reduce the reduce the number of people in prisons will have a devastating impact on all of our communities. Now is not the time for complacency. The government must act fast to release the remaining pregnant women and many more people from prison with the housing and support they need. The government needs to demonstrate leadership on the crisis. Further inaction will result in more avoidable deaths both inside and outside of prison and a public health catastrophe. Meanwhile, officials at Public Health England and the Prison Service, or Her Majesty's Prisoner Probation Service, have advised 15,000 prisoners will have to be released from jails in England and Wales to properly protect other inmates and staff during the outbreak, the PA News Agency understands. Liberal Democrat Justice spokeswoman Daisy Cooper called for the government to publish the advice given, and if it had not been followed, explain why. On Saturday, the MOJ announced up to 4,000 low-risk offenders will temporarily be released from jail in an effort to try and control the spread of coronavirus. The selected low-risk offenders will be electronically tagged and temporarily released on licence in stages, although they can be recalled at the first sign of concern. It is seen as a way to avoid thousands of prisoners, many of whom share cells, becoming infected. No high-risk criminals such as those who have been convicted of violent or sexual offences, anyone who is a national security concern or a danger to children, or those who have not served at least half of their custodial term will be considered for release. These plans are to be extended to young offenders according to the Commons Justice Committee, but the Prison Governors Association said they have warned proposal thus far and nowhere near enough. MPs sitting on the Commons Justice Select Committee questioned Justice Secretary Robert Buckland in private on Tuesday after saying the hearing could not take place in public or through a publicly available online live stream owing to technical problems and staff shortages in lockdown. Rubbish. The committee posted limited updates on the discussion online, and while the meeting took place and said a summary of the proceedings would be published afterwards, but a recording or full transcript could not be made available. Now, guys, again, this, and I'm sick of going over it, right? Sorry that I'm flying through that story. I'm wound up, right? Again, the Ministry of Justice are not confirming or denying stories to stop them getting out, right? If the figures are the true figures, oh, we can't film, there's a technical difficulty. We can't film, there's staffing problems. Let the media in. Let the news teams in. Keep the 2 metre social distancing. Practice it. Let them in stages like they do in the supermarket and let them film it. The reason it's not being filmed, guys, is because the figures that are bandied about in the media are not the true figures. And that's why this meeting was held in private because, and quote, technical difficulties. They knew this days ago. They said technical difficulties days ago. Rubbish. News crews are still going on TV, aren't they? News teams are still live, aren't they? Still news on your TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is there not? But there's technical difficulty. There'll be no transcript released. There'll be no audio released. Because the true numbers, what are being projected, are not the true numbers that's going on within prisons. Like I said, guys, if you believe that, 119 prisoners apparently have tested, 116 prisoners have tested positive in 43 prisons as of 5 p.m. yesterday. If the numbers are the numbers, and there's only been 9 prison deaths and 2 prison officers, right? So 11 in total, so 9 prisoners and 2 officers, right? Then if they're the true numbers, and you want a bit of transparency and clarity, then you would. These online things, these Justice Committee, Select Committee hearings are normally online that you can watch. The reason that this hasn't been made available online is because they are discussing the true nature and the true amount of prison deaths within our prison and the true amount of prisoners with this virus within our prisons. I believe that. I genuinely believe that. And like I said, guys, you don't have to believe me, but do you honestly believe a newspaper? And like I said, these journals, I deal with a lot of these journalists, and there's a lot of good journalists out there, but they're struggling to get stories out because the MOJ are not playing ball. Because, and I quote again, it will cause unrest and panic in our prisons. Cause unrest and panic in our prisons if the true amount of what's going on within our prisons came to light. More prisoners dying. It would cause panic. It would cause anxiety. Mental health would significantly increase and be compounded. Self-harm, suicide attempts, and riots. Attacks on officers, prison mutiny will go down that way. So again, but don't believe me. But then look at what I'm saying, and then look at the Select Committee. Why do you think that meeting's been held in private? Like I said, people are like sheep. They believe everything they read in a paper. Open your eyes. Anyway, guys, 15,000 prisoners to be released. That's not being called for. I just need to make the point. That's not definitely happening, but it's been what's been advised. I support it. For me, we should make it 25,000, 30,000, right? Dramatically reduce the prison population, give every prisoner a single cell, improve healthcare services as well. But like I said, guys, prisoners they're on the lowest rung on the welfare ladder. It's really that bad. But like I said, 4,000, I said it the other day, it's not enough. 15,000, it's a step in the right direction. But again, for me, 15, 25, 30,000 should be released. Again, can't release everybody. I'm not stupid or naive. Right? I know. And like I said, sex offenders, violent offenders, prisoners that have not served at least half of their time in prison. But again, that doesn't make sense. If you're on a short sentence, right, and you've just been sent to prison, but you've got to serve a minimum before you're released, like halfway through your sentence, right, then just release them. Short-term sentence prisoners, remand prisoners on a risk assessment basis. If someone's been remanded for murders or 2 or 3 murders, you can't just release them on side, can you? It doesn't make sense. So risk assessments, low-risk offenders, prisoners with 12 months or less should be released. All Cat D prisoners should be cut free. They've earned the right to get down to a Cat D status, to an open prison. Release them, cut them free. like I've said, but the government are shit scared because they think it's those on the right side of the tracks. Oh, all these people that are getting out of prison are murderers. Oh, shut up, fucking Humphrey. Go back and read your fucking Guardian or your fucking Financial Times, you prick. Right? Like I said, these prisoners, and the thing is, by releasing them early, they're going to get out anyway. So if they're going to commit crime, they're going to commit crime anyway. But again, people don't fucking think, oh, we'll keep them in prison for longer till they serve their sentence. All you're doing there then is delaying, if they are going to go back to crime, you're just delaying the inevitable, because 99% of prisoners, unless serving a whole life tariff, are going to be reintroduced into society at some point. It's how we treat them whilst they're in prison, which will ultimately dictate and determine how they act upon release. Prison doesn't work. Prison has never worked, right? Like I said, but this is a humanitarian crisis, guys. It's an unprecedented level that we've never faced. It's the biggest thing the prisons have faced probably since the Strangeways riots, guys, back in the 1990s. It's that sort of, it's bigger than that. It dwarfs what happened at Strangeways. But like I said, it's the only thing you can put it into context with. Prisoners have been given a prison sentence, not a death sentence, guys. Like I've said, 15,000 people. It's not enough. You've got to think, guys, in the last 25 years, the prison population has more than doubled. Still seeing stupid amounts of crime. Like I said, £15 billion a year it costs in reoffending rates and things like that, right? I think prisoners would just be glad to get out. Now, something's going on within prisons, because a prisoner he was in prison, he's not got 8 weeks or less. He wasn't up on a bail application, and he's been given bail. He's out now. He's been released on SAG. So something seems to be happening behind the scenes, right, where they're releasing prisoners. They're not releasing prisoners, guys, because they want to, right? Like I said, other countries are releasing I think they've released 85,000 and stuff like that. And America, hundreds of thousands of prisoners are being cut loose. In the UK, we've got the highest prison population of anywhere in Western Europe, right? And like I said, the government are shit scared about releasing prisoners, because it's not about, like I said, they're not doing it for a goodwill gesture. They're not doing it for compassion, right? They're doing it because the pressure's increasing. And the fact is, they're in a no-win situation, the government. If the government don't release prisoners, prisoners will continue to die, and there will be riots, and it will cause a human, like I said, it'll be just a disaster, guys. It'll be a catastrophe, right? Prisoners will die, prisoners will be murdered, and it will go on that way if there is a riot within our prisons, right? And it will put a massive pressure on the NHS, our heroes and heroines, right? It would have a domino effect onto the NHS. So it's a no-win situation for the government. Don't release prisoners, and you're being tough on crime, but you'll see riots in your prisons guaranteed, right? If you release prisoners, the taxpayers are like, oh, you're releasing murderers, I won't be voting for you in the next general election. Oh, fucking stupid bastards, guys, right? So it's a no-win situation for them. And it's prisoners that are in limbo, right? And it's prisoners' families that are in limbo. And the anxiety and the panic and the worry. And like I said, you think about these prisoners with mental health issues. Think about these prisoners with underlying health problems. Think about these prisoners that are in the 60s, 70s, 80s that have got underlying health problems, right? Think of those. 15% of the prison population has got respiratory problems, right? 1,700 inmates are over the age of 70, right? A lot of them will be sex offenders, but also lifers, etc., etc. Whole life tariff prisoners, things like that. So yeah, we need to, like I said, we need to do the right thing for prisoners. So it will, like I've said, the reason we should release prisoners, it will save lives. It will avoid unavoidable deaths, right? So it will save lives. Two, it's also cost effective, because in prison it costs approximately £3,061 to house someone in prison, approximately a month. That goes down to £166 once you release that individual on licence. But prison's not about rehabilitation. Prison's about prisons, especially private prisons. Prisons are business. The criminal justice system's extremely lucrative. And like I've said, GOAME, who do the prison transfers, these private prisons, G4S, Sodexo, Serco, G4S, Sodexo, Justice Services, Serco, G4S, I've said G4S about 6 times. Yeah, prisons, they're not bothered about rehabilitation. For them, prisons, they use prisoners as political pawns and get fat and rich off prisoners suffering and prisoners' families suffering, and even prison officers suffering. But like I said, guys, we need to do the right thing. We need to act before it's too late. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Cody out.